freeze my time. I am resident of Collinwood for YouTube, Joel Sage, joined by my buddy Butch Rosenbalm. We're here to continue our Western series with a very unique episode of, the first episode of the original Kung Fu, starring David Carradine. Very, very nice prop, sir. So, I first watched this when I was very, very young. I want to say about 11. Ooh, nice. Did you watch this when it was originally on air? Or?
I don't remember. I may have, to be honest with you. I know my dad was and still is a big Western fan. I think he might have been turned off with it because this is not a very typical Western, and I'm sure I know I saw it a little bit in first or second run syndication, but really what got me into it was, I think it was in the early 90s. TNT was showing it on Saturday mornings at like 6 o'clock in the morning. And, I knew about it. I remembered it. But that was just, at the time, I was off on the weekends at my job. And that just, I to this day, and I did it this morning. I watched another episode this morning, and there's something about a Saturday morning at like 7, 8 o'clock, 6, 7, 8, early, eating a bowl of cereal, watching Kung Fu. It just seems right.
I like that. It's really interesting that I like the fact that they have David Carradine, like when both versions, when you watch this one and Kung Fu the Legend Continues, both star David Carradine. And I like how they continue. Yeah. It's all 7. It's all the top left button. Here, come here and I'll show you real quick.
I think I know.
Give me 1 second, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's all this.
Hit that.
Yeah, it's all that.
Button.
It's all that button. But you have David Carradine in both series. He stars in it, and obviously he's a lot younger in this one. And I noticed a very familiar face to me was Laura Parker in the first episode for Dark Shadows. She played Angelique on Dark Shadows, and John Saxon, obviously we just did Joe Kidd last week, and obviously he's always had we talked about this. He's always had a very unique career, and he's been in many roles. I think literally we talked about this. He's been in every genre, and it was really nice to see him as a bounty hunter here. And I love how he always plays a different character. He's never playing the same character, or even really a same characteristic. And I'll give a great example too. And it really doesn't go off topic too much. It just varies a little. When you watch the original Black Christmas, yeah, he's playing a cop, but his cop has a bit of a sense of humor. And now, if you look at A Nightmare on Elm Street, where he's playing, I think he's playing the chief or a cop, but he's very serious in that. He's more of a serious cop in that role. And with this, he's a very serious bounty hunter. I like how he tells the one guy, he goes, do you know how to do stuff? He goes, yeah, I know how to do everything. He goes, oh, jack of all trades. He's like, yeah. He's like, leave this to a professional.
Now this is interesting because I actually did the same thing. I over on I think it's on Plex. They have seasons 1 through 3, and what we're talking about is the literal first episode.
Yeah.
But I also went back and watched the pilot because it gives everybody that remembers Kung Fu remembers him calling him Grasshopper.
Yeah.
And it gives the origin of the nickname, where all that comes from, and sets it up. And, a lot of these TV shows that we watch have this, I call them questing shows. Kung Fu is He's trying to find his brother, well, half brother, if you want to get technical. The fugitive is looking for the one-armed man, that kind of stuff. And this starts out, just giving a little background for everybody. David Carradine's character, Kwai Chang Kang, is half Chinese. His dad is an American, and the parents end up dying. Kwai Chang goes to the Shaolin Temple, grows up, becomes a Shaolin. Anyway, he runs over to his favorite master. His favorite master ends up getting killed by the nephew of the emperor. Well, Kang kind of loses it and kills the nephew of the emperor, and he has to leave China. So he comes to America. That's why the bounty hunter's chasing after him, John Saxon.
Yep.
And then in the second episode of the first season, he meets his grandfather and finds out he has a half brother, and then that sets up the questing. Whereas usually, like The Fugitive and a lot of these other shows, we're set up with the questing right away, or it's all in the pilot, and that ties into one of the things I really love about this series, and it's actually one of the main reasons I suggested it and recommended it. It's different. It's a different Western, and I feel like I've shown enough of my appreciation and fondness and everything else for the John Waynes and the Clint Eastwoods and whatnot. And this is different. This is something a little different. It has one thing that always sticks to me is the great music, and I really feel like that helps set this series apart from your regular Western.
Right. I think the one thing it does really well, it has all the elements of a Western too. It has your scenery. For those who don't know, me and Butch are friends on Facebook. I took a picture of this while I was watching it. I said, I would never pass up anything with desert porn in it. And in the opening, he's walking through the desert. But
I read that to my wife right after you sent it to me, and she's like, I thought it was on regular TV. How is there porn? She misunderstood what you were meaning.
Listen. Yeah, my wife just said, "Oh God," because she knows how my sense of humor is weird. And it is. I love the fact how you have a very familiar Western setting where when Kane, he's walking, he comes upon this boy whose home has been burnt to the ground. And he has this rifle. Again, this is everything that you would see in a Western, really.
Yeah, all the trapping.
You're right. Instead of a cowboy, you have a kung fu master, if you will, coming upon it. He's traveling, like you were saying. He's journeying, if you will. But it sort of reminds me of, you talk about Clint Eastwood, of where the Dollar Trilogy, he's traveling. You'll see just a cowboy in a movie traveling. Now, not all cowboy movies have that sense of where it starts off with somebody traveling, but this does, because it goes with the story that you were just talking about, the pilot. I did not watch the pilot. I just watched the first episode, but they do mention in this first episode, they mention the word there's flashbacks. He's remembering the temple, his teachings at the temple. They actually do show in the first episode him fighting the man that killed his mentor, his teacher. And it's a fair fight. I mean, it's a straight up kung fu fight, and it's really the choreography in both series, in the original Kung Fu and the Legend Continues, is both really good. David Carradine does a hell of a job, and really John Saxon does too. When you watch their fight, it's really well choreographed, and that's something with. I'll say this: it's better choreographed than most wrestling matches I see today.
I'll have to defer to your wisdom on that, as I don't watch wrestling. Um, just to add a little bit to that, David Carradine, when they started Kung Fu, didn't know anything about martial arts. His background was a dancer.
Mm.
And I was watching one of the featurettes. I think it's from Grasshopper to Kung Fu or something. I forget what they call it. It's on the first season DVD. If any of our viewers check that out. And David Carradine talks about, when he did his first when he comes in and tries to get the role. Gosh, I'm drawing a brain fart here. When they call him in, to interview him, and audition. God, I'm getting old and my brain ain't working. But anyway, he goes to leave and he jumps up and he says, "I do this Gene Kelly thing," and he puts his foot up on, up at the top of the wall. And he said it must have impressed him because that footprint stayed there for the entire run of the series. Now, by the time the legend continues, comes around, by then, yeah, he knows some martial arts. But I believe in the legend continues. He got into Tai Chi because his moves are a little more, which I guess is most people. Martial art is a martial art, but it's kind of funny because each of the major, and I guess minor even, the little bits I know about martial arts, each one of them has their various focuses and whatnot, and you can tell just watching his movements, they're very fluid. And as a kid and even as an adult, it was like, man, I want to do that.
I would probably get to do that and pull everybody. Pull something.
But that's why he uses Tai Chi later. Tai Chi is used by a lot of people, not just in the Asian area of the world, but here in America for older people, because it's better for them. Because one, it's exercise, and two, it's not heavy and hard impact. It's a lot of slow stretches and movements. I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but what little bits I've seen, I mean, it's not, Bruce Lee coming in and running up the wall. While we're at it, because I wanted to watch it, I wanted to mention this. Another during that featurette, and there's a bit of an urban legend that Bruce Lee come up with Kung Fu, and I don't know exactly where it came from, but the guys that are attributed to creating it are both like, no, we had no idea who Bruce Lee was when we came up with this. He did audition for it, but I believe it's the main producer was, he said he had him for like an hour, and he had this charisma and everything, and he did really good. He goes, but the truth is, he goes, I had trouble understanding what he said.
Yeah.
And we have to face the fact also, this is like 1972, and I hate to say it, I have to agree with them. I don't know that Middle America was ready for a series to star someone. God, please forgive me. Anybody watches this, please forgive that Asian. Whereas, because back then it was mostly white guys. I can remember Policewoman with Angie Dickinson coming out, and what a big deal that was. She's a woman, and she's a policeman, and she's not a meter maid or somebody's secretary. She's an actual policeman, and that was a big deal. So I'm not saying it's okay.
Right.
I'm just trying to provide a little bit of reference for people that are younger and didn't grow up during that time. And well, why didn't they do that? Well, because that's not how things were done then, unfortunately. Thankfully, we know better now.
Yeah, now it's really strange when you look at not strange, but now, even now, there are actors out there who don't get an opportunity, and it's not necessarily because they can't talk or they don't speak English very well. They just don't get that opportunity. Even I was talking about this to a friend of mine, another friend of mine, Darnell Weeks. I said, look, there are actors and actresses out there who aren't getting the opportunity to do this movie or that movie. Yeah, they might audition for it, or they might not. They might not get that call. There's a lot that do get that call and don't get a role. And with Bruce Lee, here's the thing: when you watch his movies, they're great. They're greatly choreographed. I think when I think of, I'll say this: Bruce Lee's movies probably inspired a lot of the choreography that we see today. Not just today, but for going forward.
Oh yeah.
And that's something he does not get enough credit for, in my view. But with his, because I saw a clip before I saw Enter the Dragon, before I saw any Bruce Lee movies, even Way of the Dragon, that the one thing I saw an old episode of The Green Hornet with my grandfather.
Ah.
And he's like, I said, Grandpa, is that Bruce Lee? And he said, yeah. And he had a speaking role in the episode I was watching. He said something, and you really had trouble making out what he was saying then. And he said Bruce Lee. He goes, really, there are just actors that grow up in the wrong era. But in the sense of them being put in the era they're in, like when Bruce Lee's put in this in an era where a lot of Asians aren't getting an opportunity because of the language and they're not being understood very well, they go on to inspire what they do with film, like the way Bruce Lee moved and choreographed his own fights. It went on to inspire a whole other thing with action. He goes, it put a lot of pressure on action movies. When you watch them, it's like they're very well choreographed, and when you go back and you look at Bruce Lee's movies, well, that's why.
Yeah.
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 And that's something he and I were talking about many years ago, and I think that's just something he, again, really great martial artist, no doubt, but it's just it's weird when, I don't want to say his family was, because I know what happened to his son, and that was tragic. And because I was talking about that to my friend Darnell too, that what happened to Brandon Lee was just,
A
man,
horrible tragedy.
you couldn't get any more worse luck. And the bullet acted like a hollow point, and it's just like, my God, it's like Jesus. But if Bruce Lee would have been put in the era we're in now, he'd be a megastar.
Oh yeah.
No,
Oh yeah.
no doubt, he'd be, and it's he'd be a huge star. He'd be in a Marvel movie.
He
But
probably would have been Shang-Chi if even if Shang-Chi had existed, because I believe Shang-Chi is Bruce Lee. I mean, looking back at the early series, to tie this back around, when they did the Legend, there's a movie, I forget what it's called. I think it's just called Kung Fu the movie. Brandon Lee is in it, and if I remember correctly, he plays Kwai Chang's son.
yeah,
And and eventually it's kind of a, if I remember that, kind of a quasi, the maybe a potential pilot for what became The Legend Continues, when the role was taken over. I forget the actor's name, but yeah, it's one of the that did lead to something. Again, I saw in the documentary about the making of Kung Fu. They said they wanted three things. They wanted David Carradine replaced. Well, that didn't happen. They wanted an actual advisor for Kung Fu in the history of China. They got it. His name was David Chow. I don't believe he's with us anymore. And number three, and I think this might be arguably the greatest legacy of the TV series Kung Fu, they want them to hire as many Asian American actors for the roles. The I don't say the secondary roles, but the even the lead for the episode. But and they did. I mean, you've got Key Luke and Philip on as Master Poe, and I forget the other master's name. And man, I love those guys in their role. And the guy says one of the producers says in the documentary, people couldn't get enough of them, and I can't. That's one of the reasons I keep coming back to this show. And he's like, Master, what is the meaning of life? Oh, can you feel this grasshopper? And as hokey as it may seem to people that maybe hasn't ever watched this series, it's intriguing. A good actor can take a bad script and make it interesting. And not that I'm saying these are bad scripts, but I don't know if you remembered as much, but I remember Kung Fu being made fun of when I was younger, maybe in my teens and early 20s. Calling somebody grasshopper and trying to have the cute little sayings, if you will. And as one of the reasons I think and at that time I didn't watch it until that happened to that one Saturday morning. It's like, if you took away the good acting, the good direction, the interesting things going on, yes, this would be a very trite TV show.
See,
But it rises above that thanks to all the talent involved.
It does. I think you and I grew up in different eras. When I was growing up in like the late 80s, early 90s, and I don't know, I think a lot of it was because of Bruce Lee's movies. Kung Fu was a rage. I mean, and two, it wasn't as popular as it is today, but it was sort of getting this big startup or UFC. It wasn't owned by the guy that owns it now, Dana White. It was more of it was on pay-per-view. It was this, and it took Bruce Lee's concept of bringing all the martial arts together and who was the best. That's something, again, he doesn't get enough credit for that he should. With the series Kung Fu, here's the things I heard growing up about it a bit in junior high and high school. Everybody quoted the line, if they thought you were inexperienced, they would call you grasshopper. That's what I heard. Like, and I said, you got that from Kung Fu. And they're like, and they stopped. They're like, yeah, how'd you know that? I'm like, I've seen it.
It's always, even when it was probably at the height of its popularity, if that happened, when it was on, and let's say 5 to 10 years after it went off the air and was in syndication, it's still kind of under the radar, so to speak. You like you said, when somebody said grasshopper, you watch Kung Fu too, and it was like you had that moment, you shared something, like in the old days when I can remember when. I still remember when there was once. Well, actually, there was two. But I'm not leaving out the animated series for the moment. There was one Star Trek series. It starred William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, and that was it. And to do what I do in your videos, I mean, you were just like a mega nerd, or you need to get with that man and use the Force and that kind of stuff. And it's, you could. These things, I don't want to call them underground because that's not really the term I'm looking for, but cult, that's the more, when you meet someone that is a fan of this same type of thing, instantly you have that connection. And that's the thing I like about, I Kung Fu was one of I think it was the second or third series that I collected on DVD.
Cool.
Oddly enough, the first series was Sledgehammer. Let me go ahead and answer that question. Mostly because it was 2 seasons and it was a whole lot easier to get all of those. And the second series was, of course, the original series of Star Trek. But I just think it's a really good TV series. Laura Parker, oh my God, she was just beautiful in that episode.
Absolutely.
I mean, just absolutely gorgeous. And let me ask you something. every time I watch this episode, I feel like her and Kane became intimate. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Well, I mean, here's the smoking hot blonde, you know. Yeah, I would agree. I would. I mean, the chemistry between both actor and actress are really, really good. Even when they first meet,
Mm-hmm.
there's this instant connection. There's this instant chemistry because Laura Parker's character is looking for a hired hand. She's looking for a worker, someone who help her on her farm. And here's Kane. He's in the stables, and he says, "Okay, I'll come work for you," because that's what Kane. You know, when Kane's walking around and he gets somewhere, he generally gets a job where he can get some money, and you do see that with him. I remember, and he goes to now there. He takes the little boy with with them because when the little boy goes to his aunt and uncles, they're not good people. They're not very,
Ooh, they're
you know,
trash.
yeah, they're very much trash, and they're all about the money. In fact, when he comes in, they're like, where's your money that your pa stashed away? And he's like, there is no money. And they accuse Kane's character because he said he was with a Chinaman. They accused Kane's character of stealing the money that wasn't even there to begin with.
It probably burned up or was taken by who the Indians. Was it Indians that killed the parents, or did they just say?
No, it was the boy does say it actually in the when him and Kane are camping together. I believe it might have been said before that, but I do believe it said either right before that or right as they're camping, and the two gentlemen who come and eat some rabbit with them.
Mm-hmm.
It is said that Indians. I think
Okay.
it said right before that Indians killed his pa and burnt their cabin, and because one of the gentlemen starts searching Kane's bag for money, and when they the boy points the Winchester at him, says leave him alone because Kane doesn't do anything. He has this flashback sequence about that. Remember a lesson at the temple again. Kung Fu does a really great job when Kane is experiencing something. He always remembers a lesson that he learned at the temple. And again, the flash. I think that's what Kung Fu does is what Highlander the series did really well. The flashbacks mean something, you know, and there's a point to them. They're not pointless at all. And I think that even the Legend Continues did this really, really well. So here's this, you know, when he's doing that, he's just letting them search. And when the boy points the Winchester, says leave him alone, they come over and the one man, not the guy with the beard, but the guy without one, tosses him a $50. He flips the $50 coin, and the boy catches it. He goes, and the boy says, "This is yours. They probably took this from you." And again, it's just such a great scene because it's something you would see in a Western. And that's what really this is. And in every way, it's a Western series. Without it, it might, you know, again, a Western doesn't have to have a gunfight in it, a big time gunfight or a big time, you know, shoot 'em up. For example, when we did Joe Kidd does not have this big duel sequence, you know, at all. It's a different kind of Western. And most Westerns are. When you watch Western, you're not going to, there are some Westerns that are rinse and repeat, same. Sure. There are a lot of those.
There are a lot of those.
Are.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But
No.
it's like, you know, if you drink one drink all the time, sooner or later you want something else. Now, unless of course, you know, and I don't mean this really to anyone, you know, if you're a simple man and you drink, you know, whatever, you may want to drink it the rest of your life. And if you want to watch the typical Western, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I understand Kung Fu isn't for everybody, but this is the reason I picked this. I gave you this choice as I purposely picked two, not really, or different westerns. Just a little different flavor of the week for us, and that was they were talking about the things that people remembered was Grasshopper and the flashbacks. I remember someone joking, yeah, he always had a flashback that related to it. It's like, well, yeah, that was kind of the point of it. It was introducing this Eastern philosophy to a bunch of westerns, and there's an episode I believe in the first season, and this I forget exactly what this happened to this guy, but he's screaming at Kane, and he's like, "If I don't have a right to revenge, who does?" And Kane walks off, and he stops, and he turns around and goes, "No one," and then walks off. And it's just like, that thought in a Western is interesting and anathema to so much of Westerns. I mean, how many Westerns deal with revenge? So-and-so got done wrong. So-and-so goes looking for revenge. Josie Wells.
Yeah.
Josie Wells is nothing but a revenge flick.
Yeah.
And I think they realized towards the end of that, if we keep doing this, dance of death, to borrow a Bruce Lee term, we're going to end up dead. And so they give them an out. But that's something I really like about this show and the concept of it. It's just different, and you can take these concepts and the tropes of the classic Western, and okay, like I've got a Superman shirt on, and I'm not, for everyone's benefit, I'm not going to take it off, but Kung Fu, if you will, takes this shirt and flips it over and lets us look at it from a completely different point of view, and we can look at those tropes and concepts and say, okay, that's interesting, or in real life, that's kind of dumb to go do that. And that's one of the, like I said, that's one of the reasons I picked it. Just for us to have something a little different, and to maybe talk about something different. Sorry, I got a little indigestion. I keep trying to not burp real loud.
You're okay.
And just to give the audience something a little different. I mean, I may look in a few weeks and, wow, 4 people watch this. Nobody's interested. Okay.
I've told.
We were going through it. I showed my wife. I was going through looking at the videos that you and me and Patrick had done, and El Dorado is probably our best. It has, I think, 1,500 views or so. She's like, God, really? I'm like, yeah, I know. I mean, usually it's around 100. So I don't know what it was, but El Dorado really tickles some fancy. So this may be our lowest video, and lowest viewed video, and if it is, that's my fault. That's on me, Joel.
Did Patrick not tell you I'm the one asshole on YouTube who does not give a shit about views?
I find it interesting. It's not like, oh, we only had 107, we didn't have 108. It's just, I was just curious what was our highest viewed. It's interesting. I like to see, and knowing 1,500 people have looked at me and heard my thoughts on El Dorado. It's like, God bless all of you. I should say a prayer for every one of you every night.
My wife Julie, she's like, how many views did you get on this? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't look. I'm like, I just had a good time with whoever I was with. I said, whether it's Butch, Patrick, Gordon, Mark, I said, I'm just here for the fun.
Yeah, I look forward to our videos, and I've been looking forward to this one for a while. I'm really curious to hear what Joel will have to say.
You see my shirt? See who's on it?
Actually, I can't. All I see is your picture at the moment. When we were talking earlier, I saw you, and then when you started recording, it went to your picture, so I can't see what's on it.
So there's the shirt I'm wearing has Angelique herself, Miss Laura Parker.
Ah.
So if anyone saw that, that's the shirt I'm wearing. So since Laura Parker's in this episode. And yes, I picked this shirt on purpose for that reason. I have a bunch of Dark Shadows t-shirts. in my repertoire of clothes, and I picked this one for this reason. And I love to you said about that they do. I do believe they have romance. That they get it on. They have sex. They definitely are in love when they leave. And when Kane leaves, because he does not want to bring any more trouble than what he's brought to her. There will be, and what he's meaning is the bounty hunter that he killed in self-defense. And that's the thing. Kane is not somebody who, even when you watch that fight sequence where he kills that guy, it's more in a self-defense way. And again, that's what Kung Fu gets into. It gets into the act of defending oneself, not so much seeking the aggression. And I mean, there's time when you really watch this first episode, for anybody who's never seen this series, pay attention to not when Kane fights, but when Kane has every opportunity to fight someone or to hurt someone and he doesn't. And that's really telling of the character of how David Carradine portrayed this character. Was, he was a very kind and caring man. He was taught martial arts, but to be taught something that uses deadly force, it's sort of the old Spider-Man, Uncle Ben, hey, with great power comes great responsibility. And Kane did not, he had two Uncle Bens in a way in his life, and his master who got killed, and his other master said, hey, you have to leave the temple now. And when you watch him leave, you can tell it's not something he wants to do, but it's something he has to do. And again, it's the mark of every great Western of where a journey really, usually with Westerns, with most Westerns, you don't get the story right. You don't get to know what happened right away. Well, with this series in the first episode, you do. You do get to know why he left. Why he had to leave. And here's this bounty on his head. And he's trying to do, an honest day's work with this woman, played by Laura Parker, who he does not want to bring trouble to her or the boy he found. I mean, the boy he found had, he was trying to get him back to his family. He gets him in the town, and the boy goes to his family, and the family's just all about the money. Well, when he leaves, the family's like, they see the wanted poster for Kane, and they take it to the bounty hunter, who's played by John Saxon. And that's when the one guy's volunteering to do it. And John Saxon's like, leave this to a professional. And again, great choreography, but great, really, to watch the cinematography in this and the way this is sort of shot like a Western, not just by the desert, but the town, even the temple to a degree. It feels like a Western feel. It has this great feel to it, and it's damn sure worth a watch.
Oh yeah. There's a flashback in the first episode that you're talking about.
Yep.
That flashes back to the pilot, where Kane had just defeated another Shaolin monk who had hired himself out. And this guy's like, people will know what happened here and they will remember it.
Yeah.
What you've done. And Kane looks at him and goes, the taking of a life does no one honor. And that's a thought that runs counter to, I think, just about every Western ever. But it's also an interesting thought because in my mind, yes, Kane and John Saxton's character were fighting, but John Saxton's character, he knocks the gun away. Saxton dives for the gun, and when he does, he overcommits and rolls off a cliff. Yes, it's a convenient cliff, but John Saxton's character kills himself.
Yeah.
It's not like Kane pulled out the D&D quivering palm, and exploded his heart or whatever. It's like I said, it takes a lot of the typical trappings of the Western and kind of turns them on their side, turns them on their head, lets you look at it from a different point of view. but it's still very much a Western, like you said. And if you have not, for whatever reason, if you've never seen Kung Fu, it is kind of linear. I mean, you can watch it out of order, but you should watch the pilot first. This episode, and then the next episode, which introduces the character of Kane's half brother, and sets up the questing. You can, because they knew they were going to be canceled, and they actually got to wrap up this series with, spoiler alert, Kane finds his brother. Now it doesn't make everything okay, and this is not, the lion finds his courage and the scarecrow gets his brain and the vampire gets his steak or whatever. But again, a lot of these questing shows that we grew up on, you didn't really get the climax. You didn't get the ending. And that was one of the things actually I was very thankful for in The Fugitive, that at the end of the series, Dr. Kimball was found innocent. You get that wrap up, you get that satisfying. Okay. I mean, there's, especially in Kung Fu, there's more adventures to come. There's more stories to tell, but we started at point A. We've got to point B. We've had fun getting here, and it's kind of like I'm going to tie it back to El Dorado. Think about Mississippi. Mississippi enters, doesn't know how to shoot a gun, doesn't know how to, if you will, live in the West. And by the end of the film, his character has grown, and it's kind of like the story of Kane in Kung Fu, going from coming to America. Cue Neil Diamond, they're coming to America. I'll stop. And by the end of it, he's still the same character in that he still has the same beliefs and the same thoughts, but he's a little more experienced, and we've learned an interesting story. And Kung Fu is not for everybody. I know it's not, and but really, if you ever get a chance, like we've said, if you've never seen this, watch the pilot.
Yep.
Or you can get by on the first episode that we're talking about. I thought I had the title handy. I don't, of the first episode, but you'll see it when you see the very lovely Miss Laura Parker.
Yes.
And if you know who John Saxon is, and you should, if you don't, go find out who that is right now. It's a good episode. You can get by on just watching this, and probably what we've said. If we've inspired you to go watch it, it's free on, I believe, Plex. The first 3, well, there's only 3 seasons. They don't have the pilot, but you can watch this episode, and you can watch this one episode, and it'll tell you if you want to watch it or not. So it's kind of like the first episode of the Incredible Hulk TV show from the 70s. I don't know if you ever saw any of that.
Absolutely.
But that's another questing show where he's trying to resolve the dilemma of his alter ego. And as far as the series did not have any sort of resolution. We're just left with David Banner, or whatever name he's using this week, going on to the next town.
Do you know who played his wife in the series in the first episode?
Parker.
That's right.
Hey, I'm gonna tie this to Star Trek also. William Shatner appears in the 3rd season with a horrible red wig, and he plays an Irish sea captain. And Shatner hits this role with so much gusto. It's hilarious in a good way. I mean, if you're not a fan of William Shatner, you won't like it. And that's not directed towards you, Joel. That's directed towards other viewers. But it's Shatner. I think everybody needs to watch this. Knows I'm a huge Shatner fan. I enjoy it. He doesn't do every sentence like this. It was because the man was trying to remember the lines that they just wrote 20 minutes before.
Yeah.
But he just does so much. It's so much fun watching David Carradine and Captain Kirk. Kwai Chang Kang and Captain Kirk meet in the Old West. It's like it's been one hell of a transporter mishap.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's fun. This is a fun series. Like I said, if you watch the first episode and you like it, you'll probably like the whole show. If you watch the first episode and you don't like it, okay, it's probably not for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sorry, you didn't like it.
The scene where the fight sequences that happens between John Saxon's character and David Carradine's character. David Carradine's character goes up this sort of mountain or cliff, whatever, to meet him. It's a location. He's waiting for him, and he's behind these trees with this rifle, and he stops and he says, or he calls out to him, and that's when he throws him the irons. He goes, "Place these on your feet," and he throws him the other irons, "Place these on your hands." And after that, the fight, occurs. It's really, really well done. And I think the fact that you have really, in one episode, they show you one fight and then they have another, two great choreography fights is really cool to me. And I agree with you. This is every bit of a Western, like the ones we've been reviewing. It may not, it may not have all these big shootouts or gunfights, but not every Western does, God damn it. And that's the thing. I'll give a great example, and it's one we'll probably review. When you watch the assassination of Jesse James, it doesn't have a shoot. It doesn't have two guys standing across from each other going draw.
Well, one we've done, Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. There's a showdown, but I mean it's what, two shots. Three. I mean, I'm not counting the one Liberty shoots as he's falling down, dying.
Can we? Well, I guess we have to count Jimmy Stewart's, even though he missed.
What are you talking about? That's the Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. But not every. Going back to El Dorado, which I think is a great counterpoint to Kung Fu. That ending sequence, gosh, I'm sure there's a couple of hundred shots or thereabouts made.
Yeah.
And is it entertaining? Yeah. Is the end? Is the resolution, the climax here in Kung Fu interesting? I think so. I realize everybody else might not, but it's more personal.
Yeah.
Whereas the ending of El Dorado, where they're shooting a bunch of nameless guys.
Yeah.
This fight means a little bit more because we know these two characters are interesting. That they're doing interesting things. Is one right and one wrong? No. It's just different ways of telling a story.
Yeah. Did
you watch this on Plex or what? How did you get this?
I just bought the one episode because we were just reviewing one episode. So I thought it was initially for rent. It was actually you bought the episode, so I bought the one episode. So,
download Plex if you have a Roku or a smart TV.
What?
Plex. It's free. You do have to watch ads. The second episode has David's father, John Carradine, and his brother Robert, later to be known for the Revenge of the Nerds movies. And that's what I watched this morning. And it introduces Kane's grandfather. Yeah. And it's such a good episode. It's got Dean Jaeger in it for a little bit, and that's it's fun when hey, this is the actor's father, this is the actor's brother, and there's Robert, there's David. Who's the other one? Who played Wild Bill Hickok in Deadwood? Which Carradine was that?
The one that did Wild West Tech.
Yeah, that was started it. He's in Kung Fu also. You have, you got the boy Kane, who's played. The actor's name is, I believe it's pronounced Ramses Parada. And then you see like teenage Kane, and that's David's first brother. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. And then you have, of course, David Carradine playing contemporary Kane, if you will. And so in one episode, even though it's just a quick flashback to a fight, you have 4 Carradines in an episode. And I just thought that was so cool. And John Carradine, man, I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. John Carradine could have read the newspaper or read the phone book, and I would have sit there and listened to it. Just, here you go, John. Hey, Adams. It's like, yeah. I love that voice and his diction. And our mutual friend Patrick McRae was telling me a story about how John Carradine would go through Beverly Hills, apparently at various times in his later life. Either he was drunk or hungover, and would just walk around doing these Shakespeare soliloquies. And the thought of hearing one of these, I just absolutely love. And it also fills my heart with sorrow, knowing this poor man, is drunk off his ass.
Yeah.
But here's this great actor doing Shakespeare, and it's like, it's awesome and sad at the same time.
Yeah. I'll say this too for this episode too. When you watch
Keith Carradine is the other brother. He's the one that plays Teenage Kane. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It just finally hit me.
No, thank you for that. I appreciate that because I was trying to think of his name too. And so thank you. When you watch the cinematography of this, every bit of it from this episode, and really the series too, and I think when it's shot sort of like a Western, and it's really, really well done. I think that's what this series doesn't get enough credit for, is when Butch picked this and I said, okay, I know what you're talking about. He's right. It's a Western. Get over it.
It is a different Western. It really is. But yes, it is a Western. I mean, there's a movie, I think it's called Red Sun. It's got our buddy Charles Bronson and Toshiro Mifune in it, along with Ursula Andress. Let's just go ahead and get somebody from every corner of the earth. So you have a samurai and a gunslinger chasing after this a sword that I think belongs to the emperor or something.
Yep.
And I remember being a kid, and I think I read it in TV Guide, just reading that description. I'm like, what? I was instantly hooked. I wanted to see this film. There was an old video game in the 80s where you could play a gunslinger or a samurai. And I can't remember the title of it, but I'm sure it was inspired by Red Sun. This blending of these two cultures. It's just fascinating.
I have it on DVD. Great movie. Great freaking movie. Great Western. Really, really good. Very... I don't even want to call it underrated because it's really not, but it sort of is because not too many people talk about it. But it's a great movie. I do have a Western in mind, by the way, and it's not Red Sun, but we will get to Red Sun. It's a different kind of Western. It has Charles Bronson in it. But is there anything you want to add for Kung Fu? Sorry, before I...
No, you're good. You're good. Give it a shot, folks. Watch this first episode. Like I said, you'll get a little bit more out of it if you watch the pilot, but you don't have to. It's free. It's on Plex. You'll have to sit through a few commercials. But if you've never seen it, give it a shot. Give it a try. And if you don't like it, hey, I'm sorry, but at least, you had steak with pepper and salt instead of salt and pepper. Maybe you'll appreciate it more later. I know it took me a while to appreciate it, to be honest with you.
It's a great Western series, and it's damn sure worth a watch. If you have not checked out Kung Fu, in fact, what I'll do is If you want to go buy this, I'm going to leave a link to go to Amazon where you can go pick this up at. Go check it out. Butch is right. But I do have a recommendation for a movie for next week that stars Charles Bronson as Wild Bill Hickok.
I'm getting old, can't remember anything. What's the name of it? I think I've seen it.
I think it's White Buffalo, I believe.
White Buff. I could has something like. Aren't they on like a train towards the end?
They're on a train in the beginning, actually.
Okay.
It's that's the one I'm picking for next week.
Heartbreak Pass. That's the movie
Yes.
I was thinking of.
Yes, great. That's another. I was gonna pick that one. I'm like, no, I'm gonna pick White Buffalo because it's really really good too. Heartbreak Pass is good too. But now, see, I consider his other movie too, Death Hunt, as a western. To me, it's a snow western because for those who haven't seen Death Hunt, it's really good. It takes place like in the snow. And another great snow western is The Great Silence. Again, great movies, great westerns, just like Kung Fu, a great western series. Sorry, Butch, is there anything you want to add?
I think we got it, bud.
Definitely go check this out. It has the lovely Laura Parker in the first episode, stars David Carradine, and Barnabas Collins. Buddy, I love you. You were wrong for leaving Angelique on the island of Martinique. You should have stayed there. You should have stayed. By God, what were you thinking? Like, literally. Have you ever watched where Angelique or Laura Parker walks in the old house in Dark Shadows in 1795?
Have you ever met my friend Patrick McRae?
Yes.
Do you think I've not seen that? Hey, I do a serious question. Are you familiar with his Dark Shadows experiment from about 7 years ago?
I watched his YouTube channel. He was, I think, so yeah. I was
okay.
As soon as. See, when I picked up the Dark Shadows Daybook and I read it on my channel, as I was reading it, I went back and as I was reading it on my channel for the review, I was going back and watching his channel as well. I was pulling double duty.
I was amazed he got all that done in one summer without burning out. I think I would have burned out, to be honest with you. I'm not much of a binger. So to watch, admit I know the episodes are like 22 minutes, but still after it's like, okay, I gotta watch wash my proverbial mouth out with a little something else, even if I love it, cleanses my palate.
Well, when you're watching Dark Shadows too, it because I am like Patrick, I am the Coffin box set, but whether you're watching that or you're watching it on Tubi, especially when you watch, to me, especially more so when you watch it on the Coffin box set, it feels like some of the later episodes, and I don't think they are, maybe this is just me, it feels like some of them are even longer, and they're really not. It just feels like that. But here's the thing, they don't drag though either. It's like there's so much content in each episode. It's like, my God, this is so good. It's so good. Oh goodness! But thank you, Butch, for stopping by this Saturday.
Thank you for having me.
Next week we're going to cover The White Buffalo, starring Charles Bronson. Great film, you guys. It'll be really good for us. Butch, buddy, I'll see you next Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
You too, Joel. Have a good one.
Bye.
See ya.